I mean, 18 was good last time, or not last time, but whenever we were in our deal.
He literally did come in on 18 wheels.
How many? I'm sure there are some documents on the preliminary or draft agenda on that in here. There's no room for outside.
Got a minute on that clock. Just a minute faster. And then How you doing? Like to call our Monday, September the 18th, 2023, Blaine County Chiefs, regular school board meeting to order. Thank you all for being here. Appreciate the support that you show our school and our students and our staff by being here. Thank you for that. And this time I'll call on Mr. Clark to give the invocation, and after that, we have some students from Plainview that will lead us in our pledge of allegiance.
Let us pray. Dear Lord, we come to you tonight to ask for your wisdom and guidance as we try to make the best and sound decisions for the staff and children of Blaine County Schools. Amen.
This time, Chairman Benton and board members, we have Aaron Bethay and Deviana Curry, students at Plainview Primary School, who will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance.
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Here today, y'all wait.
Thank you.
Over and go with stand for us, please, for that picture. Give these students a round of applause.
It is time. Move on to number 4. I entertain a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
I move that we approve the night's agenda. Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded. We approve tonight's agenda. Is there any discussion? There is none. All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed likewise. There is none, motion carries. Approve the agenda. Number 5, approval of consent agenda. Entertain a motion.
Motion approved. Second.
Moved and properly seconded. We approve tonight's consent agenda. Any discussion? There is none. All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed likewise. And that moves us down to number 6, spotlights and recognition. And Dr. Atkinson, I'll turn that over to you.
Thank you, Chairman Benton and board members. Tonight, we have a staff member we'd like to recognize. I'd like to say congratulations to Ms. Bridget White on being selected as the 2022-2023 Regional Career and Technical Education Curriculum and Instructional Management Coordinator of the Year for the Sand Hills region. Congratulations, Ms. White. If you'll come forward, please.
Yes. Okay, we'll move on to number 7, citizen participation. There is none.
I thought there was.
Nobody's saying this.
Who's that?
They didn't sign up.
Maybe. Everybody signed.
Okay. Keep down forever, hold your peace, I guess. Number 8, information items, so. Number 8.01, Mr. Burris, is he here tonight?
He's unable to attend, but just want to let the board know you have a copy of the Tar Heel School Construction Project update. We had, of course, our meeting's back a week when it usually is. Had a conflict there, but project is on schedule. You'll see information there about some of the financials. It's in board docs for you. It came in today. And if you all have any questions in the meantime, he will be here at the October meeting, providing additional updates. If we have any questions in the meantime, we can get those answered for the board. But it is on schedule, and it's coming along real nicely. And barring any crazy things with the weather and all, we should be set to go to move in with students and staff in the beginning of January. So
Okay.
that's great news.
Thank you, yeah, that's what we're working toward.
Did I hear you say this? He sent you something today?
It's in board docs. Y'all just uploaded it today. Yes, sir. Yeah, y'all have any questions, just let me know and I'll get answers for those if you have anything on that.
How much money are we gonna be below the project? What are we shooting for right now?
We're hoping to save all we can. But one thing that was part of that was to try to do the storage building. And I think we're gonna be able to do that. What they're looking at for projections now. So they're gonna hopefully bring some drafts for the board to look at next month. Some potential plans for that for you all to consider and approve.
All good.
All right, thank you. For that update, Dr. Axon. We'll move on to 8.02, audit report, Ms. Susan Harrison.
Good evening, board. We have Mr. Adam with us from Anderson White with our 2022-23 audit report. Thank you.
Good evening, board members. My name is Adam Seppert. I'm a partner with Anderson Smith White, your independent firm. Our firm currently does about 85 of the 115 districts. I work on 20 of them. This is my first presentation of the year. Lets us get in here early, get our work done early in mid-July. And so I'm able to come in your September meeting here and present the statements. In front of you, you should have a bound set of financial statements as well as a 3-page letter. The 3-page letter is addressed to the board being the ones that actually hire us to conduct the audit of management. And that 3-page letter just lets you know that the audit went as planned. It didn't have any difficulties in timing, any difficulties in selecting samples or getting information from the finance department or any other department. There were no disagreements with how to apply accounting principles. There were no significant new GASBs that we had to implement within these statements, just which we add pages and more information. The newest GASB set around leases and subscription-based software. None of those apply there to the statement. So again, that 3-page letter is just kind of standard wording, just letting you know that the audit is fine. I'm here tonight to go over mostly the balanced set of financial statements, and we're looking at 76 pages, but I'm hoping to just point out the information that I think is most relevant, most important. These statements comply with all GASBs, all generally accepted auditing standards and presentation standards. But picking out some of the most important information kind of gets cumbersome when you're looking at 76 pages. One of the things Dr. Atkinson was talking about, the new Tar Heel school. Your building is a new school that is being funded with state funds. When you look at these statements, there are 2 key terms to focus on: net position and fund balance. Net position takes your funds, but then adds the value of your buildings, the cost of the pension liability that is associated with the state employee that you have hired over the years and are now being paid out of the state pension plan or out of the retirement health plan. But that net position for you went up $28 million because you're building a new building. You're getting money to build a new building, adding $28 million of construction in progress. And so your net position goes up, but that has nothing to do with whether you can make payroll next month or not. So I like to key in on the discussions of fund balance. That is where your cash is. That is where your excess funds are. That is your current and assets and liabilities. And to me, those are the most important statements within these 76 pages. So if you would turn to page 1. Again, you hire us to conduct our audits, write these financial statements, and ultimately issue an opinion on these statements. So we are not a part of management. We can't say necessarily whether you're spending your money on the right things or not. We are simply here to give you our opinion that states these statements are accurate. Better or worse, good or bad, these are accurate. So if you look at the first paragraph on the first page, that is considered the opinion paragraph. It basically just states that we believe these financial statements accurately reflect the net position and the fund balance for Bladen County Schools as of June 30, 2023. This is what's considered a clean, unmodified opinion. So again, that's page 1, paragraph 1, the opinion letter. After that, you have a management discussion and analysis, about 10 pages, just talking about what went up, what went down. And again, as you read through that, I really would suggest keying in on the discussion of fund balance versus that position. So you can see that page 4, some of your financial highlights here. Your government-wide net position, business activities, governmental activities actually went up 34.5 million. And on that third bullet point, your fund balance increased 2.6 million. So again, to me, that third bullet is the most important figure to really key in on. Adding $2.6 million of fund balance means a lot more than adding the value of a building or the fact that the pension and retirement plan liabilities went down $4 million. Again, those don't have anything to do with your day-to-day operations and your ability to fund programs and write checks. So very key and important and positive financial highlight is that $2.6 million of additional fund balance added. And that the majority of that being in the other special revenue. So the statements are designed, again, hopefully to go from back to forward, ending on that net position. Page 12, exhibit 1 is a balance sheet for both governmental and business activities. It combines all of your fund balance. It adds the fact that you have $57.9 million of capital assets. It also adds the fact that you have a $20.9 million pension liability and a $29.2 million retirement health liability. Again, those two liabilities are really liabilities of the state plans, but this is just your portion of it that relates to the individuals that worked here and retired from here. So you can see at the bottom of that page, net position of 16.6 million, the business activities net position negative 127,000. But again, fund balance for both of those government-wide statements and your business statements, which is essentially your child nutrition fund. Really looking at fund balance and in particular on the business activities, looking at cash on hand really is the most important. Exhibit 2 is an income statement. Again, this is across all funds. And really, again, muddies the water when we're looking about how well you did financially in the current year. So to me, exhibit 3, page 15, is really the start of the meetings statements. This is the balance sheet for all of your governmental funds. show your assets and your liabilities, in which then ultimately comes down to your fund balance. So the first column, your general fund. Your fund balance at the bottom of that first column, $1,390,000. That's an increase of $558,000 from last year. Your other special revenue fund, which is also made up of largely local funds. There are also some state and federal grants that run through there. Medicaid runs through there. But the key difference in that other special revenue fund this year is the collection of indirect costs. So that fund balance is currently $4.5 million, an increase of $1.75 million from last year. You guys are receiving extensive federal dollars from ESSER funds, essentially. These are the COVID funds. You're allowed to collect indirect cost, the cost, the overhead essentially of managing those funds. That indirect cost is recorded in the other special revenue fund. And it really is, when we say across the state, those are really acting as savings accounts for when the ESSER fund comes in. There are programs that those ESSER funds are paying for that you're going to want to continue. The increase in fund balance this year is in line with what we're seeing across the state, and it's been in line with what has happened the last few years. When these COVID funds started coming through in 2020, you're not supposed to supplant services with those, but they certainly pay for services that you wouldn't have to pay for otherwise locally or with state funds. So across the state, we are seeing districts add fund balance. They're no different. Your local fund balance of 1.4 million, that's actually probably back in line where it really needs to be pre-COVID. You've gotten quite low in your general fund balance over the previous 5 years. And so those COVID funds have allowed you to really replenish it to a level that I think is really what you need just for tax bill purposes, just for unfunded mandate purposes. Really the bulk of the money that is available for appropriating future programs or for keeping services running that will expire when those COVID funds expire are really found in that other special revenue fund in that $4.5 million. You also have $2.5 million in capital outlay available for whatever add-ons you want in the new school. And there's also still some Hurricane Florence money that is currently being spent here in 23-24 to do some repairs, parking lots, things like that. If there are tennis court issues, stuff like that, that really dates back to Hurricane Florence. You received large amounts of money up front for, and about 10 districts across the state did, to help dry out buildings, recover from damage, and get kids back into school after Hurricane Florence. That money was given to you by the state, told to use it to get bills paid, because places like ServPro, they're not going to come in unless they have a check on the way. And then you were to use those state funds, also use any insurance proceeds you receive, FEMA dollars, and ultimately spend all of those on Hurricane Florence related expenses and repairs. And so you still have $1.458 million available there. But it's my understanding that you've got planned to spend just about all of that. I think you look at anything that's happening to a roof or a parking lot today, you can certainly link it back to what happened years ago, Hurricane Florence. There's also $546,000 of funds at the individual school level across all of your elementary, middle, and high school. And so your total fund balance as of June 30, 2023 is $8,981,000. Any questions about this balance sheet? Again, to me, these are the most important schedules here. This exhibit 3, which is the balance sheet. The next one will go.
I have a question.
Yeah.
What is a GASB?
Governmental Accounting Standards Board. They're a group of intellectuals that decide what readers of the financial statements need to be more transparent. So they'll issue changes, modifications to how things should be accounted for. I think they're currently at around GASB 97. I think that's the one for the subscriptions. If you remember about 15, 20 years ago, GASB 34 is what created that whole net position. These statements used to be just typically fund balance type statements. And the GASB issues these statements for all governmental entities across the entire United States. So a GASB might be very relevant to the city of Chicago, but it doesn't matter as much for Bladen County Schools. So they issue those pronouncements, those modifications, how these statements should look, taking into account all governmental entities, not just school systems. When you get into counties and towns, their revenue structure completely different. They don't get money from state and federal sources like you do. They're not reliant on other governments. They're charging taxes, just operating differently. So their operations need to be disclosed and presented differently than maybe a school system, but we still have to operate under those same parameters and make the statements all uniform. So as much as I would like to cut out some of these 76 pages, I can't. They're, again, in conformity with the accounting standards for all government entities. Turn to page 16. This is exhibit 4. This is an income statement for those exact funds that we just went over, those fund balances, those assets and liabilities. This shows the revenues and expenses. You can see across the top, your general fund has about $8.2 million in revenue. The bulk of your funds come from the state public school fund, $35.8 million. This year, you received $18.8 million from federal grants. If you look back to 2019, pre-COVID, your federal grants, they ran around 4.1 million. So you can just see how much of your federal grants fund is made up of those ESSER funds. And I'll point that out at the end in the back on your schedule of awards, just how much of that $18.8 million is made up of COVID. So at some point, that $18 million is going to go back to 4.5. And that's where, that fund balance reserve that you've been building the last few years comes in. We're having numerous conversations with districts where counties are seeing the increases in fund balance and wanting to spend it down almost immediately. And I think that just creates the opportunity for almost a cliff where you spend down your fund balance, these funds run out, and then you're left having to provide services and wondering how to pay for them. Any conversation that comes along with this increased fund balance should really be looked at in terms of, it took us 3 to 4 years to build it back up. Give us 3 to 4 years to spend it back down. Again, because there are prolonged costs from COVID. There's just even just non-COVID related salary increases. Like I said, there's unfunded mandates that come down from the state. The retirement rate continues to go up. Health insurance continues to go up. These costs are going to have an impact, I think, going forward on all districts. And so being able to put away as much fund balance these last few years has been the recommendation we've given to any district we work with, and what we're seeing again across the state, districts of all sizes, adding fund balance anywhere from 100,000, 200,000, and the larger ones adding 10, $20 million. Your other special revenue fund collects 4.1 million. Capital outlay this year, $26 million. Again, the bulk of that being needs-based lottery funds for the new construction. Your expenditures are broken out between instructional, system-wide, debt service, and capital outlay. And your funds, your state public school fund, your federal grants funds, they carry no fund balance. Those funds are use or lose it. You get allotments. You spend it, you get reimbursed for it. So you can see your revenues equal your expenditures on those two funds. And you can see the general and the other special revenue fund where your expenditures are lower than revenues, creating those increases in fund balance. So at the bottom of that page, again, shows you the increase in fund balance, beginning balance, and the end of year balance, which matches that balance sheet on exhibit 3. Are there any questions about this income statement? All right. So those exhibits show your governmental funds. You also have one business type fund, an enterprise fund. It is called a business type fund because it actually sells something, sells food. So it's treated a little different. If you turn to page 22, exhibit 7. Now, this fund is treated different in that fund balance and net position are the same thing. Because it's a business type fund, it has sales, it has cost of sales. It actually has to be accounted for on a full accrual method. So any asset related to this fund, any liabilities related to this fund are reported directly in the fund, making net position equal fund balance. So you can see there are liabilities for your child nutrition employees portion of the pension liability, of the retirement health liability. You also have capital assets, third of the way down, $600,000 of the furniture and equipment in the cafeterias that gets depreciated over time. The big thing though, those liabilities actually create a negative net position. Well, you don't have negative money in child nutrition. So when I look at a business type fund, especially child nutrition, I really like to look at the cash on hand. First line, cash and cash equivalents, $1,058,000. And that is a decrease of $75,000 from last year. If you think about that in terms of how many years can we operate using $75,000 of our cash when we have $1 million on hand, that's just a nice healthy cushion for child nutrition operations. However, the reason you actually use cash this year, inflation, your food cost up hundreds of thousands of dollars, $100,000 increase in salaries. These are pressures that are going to be continuous, I think, going forward for this fund. When you look at page 8, or exhibit 8, page 23, that income statement for that fund shows you some of those operating costs. So this fund sells food, but you also are part of the CEP program, which allows all kids to eat for free and then you're reimbursed by the federal government. For the last 3 years, all kids across the state, across the country have eaten for free under a COVID plan, a summer feeding COVID plan. You've benefited from having CEP in place beforehand. And so your kids continue to all eat for free, which has kind of saved your participation. Other districts that had to go back to charging actual lunch prices have seen a significant decline in participation. Whereas again, your students ate free before COVID, ate free during COVID. So that really has helped your participation, which helps your revenue sources. You can see that food purchases total about $1.5 million. Salaries and benefits total about $1.4 million. Unfortunately, those salaries and benefits also include the expenses related to the pension plan and retirement health plan. So it kind of mirrors what your actual operating salaries are. But there's actually a schedule in the back that excludes those effects. So if you would turn to page 63. Page 63, it's a non-GAAP schedule, meaning it's not generally accepted, but it does take your full accrual statement, which is exhibit 8, and takes all of the essentially non-cash items and puts them below the line to give you a better operating number. So you can see at the bottom of the page, there's this reconciliation of these reconciling items that include the changes in the pension liability, in the OPEB liability, the other post-employment benefit liability, that is essentially the retirement health plan. Deferred outflows and inflows, those are all related to pension and OPEB. Also, any money that you spend on equipment purchases or changes in inventory or depreciation, which is a non-cash expense. It takes all those out, puts them below the line, and really gives you, again, a better operating income statement. So you can see from the top, sales of 190,000, expenses, 4,116,000. Those include that $1.5 million of purchased food. Last year, that number was 1.28 million, so a $300,000 increase in food costs. This year, you received federal funds for supply chain assistance to the tune of $115,000. Didn't do anything to touch the $300,000 increase in food costs. Your salaries and benefits, $2,103,000. That compares to 1.97 million last year, so an increase of $106,000. Again, these are costs that are just going to continue to go up. And I don't know that the reimbursement rate from the USDA is going to mirror those continued increases. So again, having $1,058,000 on hand, I think, is an important place to be, in the impacted environment. Your federal reimbursements were $3,546,000, and an actual increase from last year. The reimbursements last year were 3.4 million. So again, that participation, the fact that your kids have always eaten the same way year after year, I think really made it so that you didn't lose as much cash as you could have. Just participation goes down 10%, $300,000 out the door. So again, I think these are really strong numbers for operations, post-COVID free meals, only using $75,000 of cash. I think that again is a positive financial aspect, and it's still in the wrong direction. Any questions about either this back schedule or Exhibit A, that income statement or county commission? Those 5 pages, to me, again, the most important. After that, you have pages and pages of footnotes going over all of your accounting policies. There are about 10 pages of footnotes related to the pension and OPEB plans. There's schedules of your receivables, your payables, your changes in fixed assets, where you can see the $20-some million added to construction in progress. There's also some reconciliation that show you what amounts take you from your fund balance down to your net position. All of those debt items like lot pension liabilities, like compensated absences, like the fact that you have some installment purchases where you're buying, where DPI is buying buses on your behalf. You have a debt reported for those, even though you don't make the payments. So those pages and pages of footnotes kind of end on page 53. This is a 10-year schedule showing your net pension liability over the years. So just real quickly, 2 things I kind of want to point out on these next 6 schedules. You actually have 3 benefits: the pension plan, the retirement health plan, and then there's a disability income plan. The disability income plan is tiny compared to the retirement health. So really the main 2 are the pension plan and the retirement health plan. But you can see that your portion of the pension liability, $21,767,000 as of 2023. Last year it was 7.2 million, and then the year before that, 18.9 million. That number goes up and down. It's an actuarial calculation that the state, they hire actuaries to come in and calculate. They look at trends, they look at how the stock market's doing. It's all delayed by years because it takes actuaries, they take a whole year to actually calculate the numbers, and so they look back even further. So these wide variances in that liability, again, they affect net position, but they really don't affect fund balance. What affects fund balance turn to page 54, is how much you have to pay for every dollar of salary you send out the door in the form of a paycheck. So you can see for the pension plan, your contractually required contribution was $5.6 million. When you look back at 2014, $2,290,000, over doubled. Same thing goes for the retirement health plan. If you turn 2 pages, page 56. So when you pay a dollar of salary, you have to send about 28% of additional, or 28 cents to the retirement system. Part of it being for that pension plan. The next biggest part is the retirement health, your contributions to that, $2,244,000 this year compared to $1,421,000 back in 2014. So those contributions, those are expenses that are just going to continue to go up. That retirement rate has gone from a 10, 12, 15% rate up to nearly 30% in the last 10, 12 years. And hopefully, anywhere where that's going to go down. Retirement health benefits to retired employees were so expensive that they had to do away with it as a benefit for teachers and employees that were hired after 2021. So that's just a giant state unfunded liability that you will continue to pay your portion of every time you pay a paycheck. The other thing I want to go over is the compliance section, which starts on page 64. So our audit is not only a financial statement audit, it is an audit of compliance with state and federal requirements. Page 64 is essentially the beginning of 3 more opinion letters. One of them being over your compliance with state program requirements. The other being your compliance with federal program requirements. And the third one being over internal control. These 3 are also being unmodified opinions. We didn't have any instances where you did not adhere to compliance requirements. We saw no significant deficiencies in internal controls and administering those state and federal programs. And so again, positive, clean, unmodified opinion letters on those. Page 70. List your federal programs that we audited as later. We have to audit 20% of your federal dollars every year, and every program that is over $750,000 has to be audited once every 3 years. This year was your EC cluster, Title I, and then the education stabilization funds, which are those ESSER funds, the COVID funds. They're considered high risk. They actually get audited every year until they're done. And then the state programs, the state public school fund, your biggest source of revenue from that state public school fund in there is the non-CTE codes. That has to be audited every year because it is such a significant portion of your state dollars. We had one finding last year related to concussion awareness documentation, and that was corrected in the current year, and that's dated on page 72. After that, page 73, 4 pages of the various state and federal awards. The one thing I want to point out there on page 74, the middle of the page, the Education Stabilization Fund accounted for $13,143 of your federal funds. And again, those are the funds that are expiring over the next 6 months to 18 months. That's all I've got. Overall, a very positive opinion, a very positive set of statements. I think I find myself in a more and more financially stable position. So, congratulations to the board, Susan. working with us, the last few years, able to provide everything we asked for. All of our samples, all of the documentation, the audit goes smoothly. And we don't have to come in and make significant adjustments. So the reports and information I think you're getting throughout the year match the information that comes out of the audit at the end of the year after we come through it. Any questions about anything? That's all I've got, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Adam.
Move on to 8.03. Overview of our accountability results and Mr. McCarthy.
Good evening, Chairman Benjamin, members of the board. From tonight to talk to you about some of our accountability data from last year. You'll have a copy of this presentation sent to you in the board docs. The first several pages goes through and talks about our students that were, our percentage of students that were at grade level proficient, which is grade levels 3, 4, 5 on their test that they took last year. And this whole chart, I'm not going to take time to go through every single bit of it, but it shows all the subjects broken down by subgroups. Then it goes through all the tests that were taken in grades 3 through 8. Then it takes down through 3, 4, 5, 6, and all the way down through. Go through ACT scores, work key scores, math course rigor, and our graduation rates. Our graduation rates were very good this past year as well. This is what the main part of the information that gets put out to the media is. These are our school performance grades. You can see here, I've color coded this so we can see the ones that have improved. You can see Blake's there, increased by 1 point, 47. The way they calculate the school performance grades, it's based off of 80% the achievement rate that the students make, and then 20% of the growth that they make. I'll discuss that a little bit more as we get to that. But you can see when we look at this, 10 out of our 13 schools met or exceeded growth. So that is something that we are very, very proud of here in the school. Here I've got a little bit more breakdown of the individual schools. Looking at Bladen Lakes Primary School, their achievement did drop a half point, but their growth went up 9.3 points. They are currently 8 points away from being a C school. Next, we have Bladenboro Primary School. Bladenboro Primary School, they exceeded their growth. You can see they've got achievement of 5 points. Their growth went up 17.2 points from where it was last year. They're only 5 points away from being a C school. They are under no federal or state designations. Dublin Primary School. Dublin Primary School is classified as a recurring low performing. That's at the state level. That just means that over the past 3 years, 2 out of their past 3 years, they had one of their target groups or their school target group was either a D or an F, and they did not meet growth. And then this past year, they exceeded their growth. Their achievement went up 10.7 points. Their growth went up 18.8 points. They're currently 14 points away from being a B school. East Arcadia School, because it's such a small school, they did not have enough data. You have to have 30 students in a group to get you a subgroup. They didn't have enough. We're hoping that this year with the addition of 5th grade, we can get that to where they are a school that will give us this data. But if you look at the very bottom there underneath EVOS, you can see they have still met their growth for all students. The EDS is economically disadvantaged subgroup, and then the reading group. So they've met their growth, even though they are not large enough to count as getting us a school performance grade. Elizabethtown Primary School, Elizabethtown Primary School, again, low performing, recurring low performing. At the federal level, they're TSI, which is targeted support and improvement. They have consistently underperforming subgroups in students with disabilities and additional targeted support of students with disabilities. However, that's the negative of it, but when we look at the school as a whole, they have increased their achievement 6.9 points. Their growth has gone up 17.7 points. They're currently a D school, but they are 12 points away from being a C. They brought themselves up quite a bit. Plainview Primary, low performing, recurring low performing, they had some drops. They dropped 13.6 points in achievement, 22.2 points in growth. They did not meet their growth. They're 12 points from a C. They're currently a D school. Bladenboro Middle School. No state designations, federal designations. They are TSI, consistently underperforming subgroups and students with disabilities, and TSI, additional targeted support students with disabilities. Their achievement went up 3.3 points. Their growth went up 1.2 points. They exceeded their growth. They are 2 points away from being a C school. Clarkson School of Discovery. They are low performing at the state level. On the federal level, they have no designations. They are a D school. They did not meet their growth. Their achievement went down 3.4 points. Their growth went down 23.4 points. They are 5 points from being a C school. They can bring that up to the C school next year. Now, Elizabethtown Middle School. Elizabethtown Middle School is currently our only F school. However, I say that they have made incredible growth this past year. Their achievement has gone up 8.3 points. Their growth has gone up 22.9 points. I know we see a lot of those F's, but if you look down across the bottom, you can see that they've met growth for all of their students. The Black students, the Hispanic students, the white students, the economically disadvantaged, EL students, the reading scores and the math scores have all met growth. We've got one group there that did not meet growth. That's the students with disabilities, which when you have a lot of where the students have been clustered in the past. Yes, sir.
Over in the right corner there, top right corner. You got us looking at ourselves here.
Oh.
Can you move that?
Let's not get in. Okay, sorry about that.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, you can see their achievement was at 25.3. Their growth is at 79. So they've made some significant growth. Elizabethtown Middle School is currently 12 years away from being a D school. So we're that close to having all of our schools off of D, with no schools that are currently in an F. Next, we have Tar Heel Middle School. Tar Heel Middle School, low performing, recurring low performing. TSI, consistently underperforming subgroups for our Black students. Their achievement went up 2.9 points, but their growth dropped 12.4 points. They did not meet their growth. Again, across the bottom there, all of their subgroups, all students overall did not meet. Black students didn't meet. Hispanic students did not. White students did not. Economically disadvantaged did not. The EL students did. Reading and math did not. They are 15 points away from a C. Now, this one is the one that we were all just about screaming about when this one came in. We're so pleased with this. Bladen Early College. Bladen Early College had no state or federal designations. Their achievement from last year went up 20.7 points. Their growth went up 10.1 points. And Ms. Cheshire made me promise that I would let you know they are currently 2 points away from being an A school.
Wow.
Great.
They absolutely knocked it out of the park. They exceeded their growth. Did an awesome job. Next, we had East Bladen High School. East Bladen High School also did a great job. They're also a B school. 63.8 was their achievement level. 94.7% was their growth score. For a performance score of 70, which again brings them at a B. 4.3 points achievement went up. Growth went up 12.9 points. They are 15 points away from being an A. And if you look across the bottom there, you can see that they, in all of their subgroups, they exceeded growth with the exception of the multiracial students. That subgroup was not small enough, and students with disabilities, they only met growth. They did not exceed growth there. And then we have West Bladen High School. West Bladen High School is a C school. Their achievement went up 5.2 points. Their growth dropped 1 point. I looked at this earlier on today. They were 1 point away from being a B school. Had they not had that 1 point drop, if they had stayed the same with their growth, they would have been a B school. They did exceed their growth. All students exceeded growth. Black students met growth. Hispanic students exceeded growth. White students met growth. Economically disadvantaged met growth. EL students exceeded growth. Earlier on, I mentioned about the accountability models. The way the state breaks this down is they look at it and say, we're going to take whatever your achievement level is, and we're going to multiply that times 80%. We're going to take whatever growth you make, and we're going to multiply that times 20%. We wanted to look at it and see what would it be like if the models were not skewed nearly as much. And you can see the table here on the side shows us, you can see the graphs now. When you get up to the early college, because their scores are so high, it doesn't have as much of an impact as far as how it will change their grade. But if you look at a school like E-Town Middle School, EMS down there, the 80-20 model, their grade brings them in at 36. Okay. If it just bumped to a 70-30, they'd be at a 41, which would be a D school. Bring them in at 50-50, they're at 52. So I tell people, I look at it this way, when we focus on the achievement and not on the growth, we're not really focusing on what our students are actually doing over the course of the year. We're focusing on what happens one day. I use the analogy of if I go to the doctor, I weigh 400 pounds on January 1st. If I go back on December 31st and I'm down to 300 pounds. Do I want the doctor to look at me and say, congratulations, you've done an awesome job this year, you've lost 100 pounds? Or do I want the doctor to look at me and say, you're still 300 pounds, you're still overweight? We need to celebrate the success that our students are making. And unfortunately, this accountability model does not necessarily do that.
And one thing we are, Mr. McCarthy, I can interject, one thing we have been advocating for, and this will take an active legislation because it is spelled out in legislation that 80% is achievement, one-time test score. And we know some kids don't test well, they just don't. So we've had some work groups that have been going on across the state with different folks, and there is a push to go to the 50-50 model, which would make it equitable. 50 for that one-time test, 50% of that total score, and then 50% of the work that the child does throughout the entire academic year. And so that's where the teaching and learning takes place, because there's been right now our state values that the work that takes place in a classroom is only worth 20% of a school's grade. And that's ridiculous. I mean, we'll call it like it is. It's ridiculous that, the work that children do throughout the year does not have no more value than 20% at the end of the day. The strictest guidelines of a state have come out of North Carolina. We've done this to ourselves. And we had a conversation about that just last week at our law symposium, talking about performance grades and different things that are coming out. So there is a push to try to get the legislature to let us look at an equitable model being 50-50. You see where we would fall at if it is a 50-50 model. Then you're truly taking, okay, I'm taking half based off of what's considered proficiency or that achievement score. And then I'm taking half of how much the children grow. Because let's be honest, there are some students, unfortunately, that will never, ever, ever pass that test. Never. And it's not because that they're not being taught. It's just that the level of it and assessments themselves, there's been some discussion too. The assessments are not adaptive. So, some exams you take, if you take the first question and I respond a certain way, say it's A, B, C, D, and the correct answer should be B, and I respond C. Well, each one of those answers is a level. Our tests are not adaptive. We have 2 or 3 forms of the test, and regardless of that child's level of cognitive ability or ability to perform, they get the same format regardless, period. So there's been a push to make those tests adaptive. So how I respond to a question dictates the next question that I get. If I respond well, I'm going to be able to push the button to the next level. if I did not get that question, I'm gonna step back and see, well, where is that knowledge level at? And where can I meet that student at? And then gauge that level of questioning. But our folks are working hard in the buildings every day, and I think these increases in growth have really proven that. Are we where we really want to be? Nobody, because we're coming back off of learning loss with COVID too. So you're looking at being out of school and being online for quite some time, and they still perform this way with that growth. So I think we celebrate. I don't remember in my time in Blade, we have had 10 schools that have met or exceeded growth. That is tremendous. And we're only moving forward from here. And so I think we should celebrate that our folks are working hard, and that, you know, when we talked with our principals and went back and shared this with schools, we don't want folks to get discouraged by that 80%. That's a one-time test score. That doesn't define a child. A one-time test score doesn't define the quality of a teacher or staff member. Because we were all judged on one score. If we look back in our history, if we went back to one score of something, I'm sure we all had a time where we didn't do well on one score. I know I did. And if we were measured by that, just think about that. So the pressures of the accountability model and the pressures of the testing, we put too much strain on children, too much strain on teachers, too much strain on principals, too much strain on district staff, too much strain on boards of education. And we're putting that pressure on ourselves from our legislature. So we really need to, we want to see an accurate depiction of where we are. So that's why we've been advocating so heavily. That's why I asked Mr. McCarthy to put these other models up here, so that if we could get there, and he's actually going to show you, you've got the breakdown of what those grades will look like on this next slide.
Well, if I could chime in on that. I attended the leadership conference for the summer. The deputy superintendent, he was there. They're hoping, and their plans is by the end of 2024, this be gone. And a more likely model will be put out that won't punish the kids as bad.
Right.
So it's statewide that they're trying to do away with the letter system right now.
And as Dr. Atkinson was just saying, anything can happen to a student on that day. You could have a student who is a straight A student, knocking it out of the park all year, wakes up that morning, has to come to school, just found out, the dog passed away or something like that. Or gets fussed at right as he's walking out the door because he forgot to let the dog out, anything can happen that can change your child's mindset on that one day.
We've had students that have lost loved ones that night, had to come in and take a test that morning. And you could imagine their mind is not on that test. We've had to add, because the state wants you've got to have a 95% participate. They force that testing. I mean, that's just the barrier that we've been up against. But like you said, there's just so many uncontrollable things that fall outside. The child can't control. A lot of times the teacher and school staff can't control. We can't control those conditions, those environmental factors that just aren't there. So I'm encouraged by the fact that there's some work there, and I think our DPI officials and the work groups are helping us try to make that change. But I think that definitely it's time. It's past time for reform, because we're going to give an accurate depiction of the hard work that's going on by our students and by our staff. Is to make it a fair model, make it 50-50.
And as we said, the next slide shows you what our district would look like with the letter grades under the different models. The current model that we're at right now is the 80-20. We have no schools that are A. We have 2 schools that are receiving a letter grade of a B, 2 schools that received a letter grade of a C, 7 schools that were a D, 1 school that was an F. If we just bump to 70-30, you can see the number shift. We've got 3 B schools, 3 C schools, 6 D schools, no F schools. And if it bumps to the 50-50 that we really would love it to be at, we're at 3 B schools, 6 schools that are a C, and 3 schools that are a D. It's much more of an even curve if we look at it that way. Questions I can answer.
Are other school systems across the state, what are they using?
As far as the model, that's a statewide model.
That's a statewide model.
Yes, sir. It's in legislation that it has to be 80% proficiency and 20%. So that would require a state law change. And that's been in for some time, I think since 2012, 2013, I believe was the year that was enacted, if I'm not mistaken. So we've been fighting this battle for quite some time.
Thank you, Mr. Sargent. At this time, we'll move to 8.04 preliminary review school improvement plans for low performing schools. Dr. Axon.
Thank you, Board Chair, Mr. Benton, and board members. You have in board docs, went ahead and gave you all the schools. The schools are currently working on their school improvement plans. That's an ID and password for you to go in to review their progress. They're continuing to work on those. So I want to again accomplish some things specific in legislation that deals with low performing schools and things that had to be accomplished. The local board has to receive preliminary plans, which you'll be able to access those tonight. So this is document on our agenda. That information has been given to you all. At the next board meeting, we'll ask you to approve the school improvement plans for the year. Those are living, breathing plans, so schools can modify those as they work throughout the year. They're not stagnant. But we want to again give you everyone tonight so that you have all schools access for all schools plans. One other thing I'll need to do tonight, and you've got a copy of this as well in board docs, is the district improvement plan. Bladen County Schools is not a low performing district, so we do not have that mark against us. So that is great. I think there's 26 districts in the state that are considered low performing. I think a couple of our neighboring districts unfortunately do have that status. That depends on the number of schools and the growth measure. But I do want to share some things as a district improvement plan. As you know, our strategic plan was based off of the NC Star indicators. We'll be revisiting that again this year to modify that. Our district administrative team meets twice monthly. One of those meetings is dedicated to discussing and working with our low performing schools and those that have TSI and CSI designations. So the CSI and TSI designation, TSI is targeted support and intervention or targeted school improvement. And then CSI is comprehensive. We only have one CSI school, which Mr. McCarthy shared, which is Elizabethtown Middle. It is hard to get these labels off of you. And, you know, we preach the education, we shouldn't be labeling children, but they really want to label schools and they want to label all that. And as he shared, once we get to the idea of low performing and recurring low performing, when you get on that recurring, it takes you 2 years of not being low performing to get off that list. So it's very hard to get off. But regardless, we're going to continue to support those schools. I want to kind of run through this with you briefly. You have a copy of that in board docs as well. So all schools, as a part of the district and their individual school improvement plans, will identify specific strategies to improve academic proficiency and growth, and that'll be documented in their plans. We do require they have goals that are around performance and growth measures, obviously to talk about be SMART goals that are attainable and achievable that they can work for throughout the year. They will also include as a part of their school improvement plan, which is a part of our district strategic plan / district improvement plan, that the LEA has a support and improvement team that's been implemented, which we have done. In fact, we made those, we worked through that today, and we'll be discussing that with principals on tomorrow. And then all schools will align strategies to the district strategic plan. So specifically as it relates to school indicators, each school improvement plan, there's 12 key indicators that the state says that you have that they measure themselves against and work toward. The one that falls under the schools is B1.01, and it says the LEA has a LEA support team, and that's the same thing that's in the district's NC Star indicator B04, and which aligns with our strategic plan dimension B2, which is the district examines the existing school improvement strategies being implemented across the district and determines their value, expanding, modifying, and culling as the evidence suggests. So we're looking at data, but particularly in these schools that have been identified low performing or CSI, TSI, which subgroups have been identified in that and why. We're never going to solve the problem if we don't understand why is that happening. So is there targeted interventions that need to take place there? Is there something we're doing from a teaching perspective that needs to change? That could be any number of things, but you know, we've got to follow what that data says and then make informed decisions. So one thing that will be important as a part of this is they'll include these strategies and indicators in their plan. We do have a district administrator who will be like a district coach assigned to those particular schools. They'll be a part of their school improvement planning team so that we can be there to provide feedback, support, and to also assist. And that will help us if Say there's a strategy that's, we know is going to work well at school A, and we need to implement that across the board, or we've got two schools that may have a certain subgroup. So we're looking at sharing and working together to develop those strategies. One other big thing about that too is that we will work, there'll be some state dollars that was actually federal dollars that are allocated through the state specifically for the CSI schools. In the past, they have done TSI. I don't think we got TSI last year. Don't know if they'll fund TSI, but not, we will look at doing some Title I set aside and other federal funds to help support some high dosage tutor and other academic supports in those particular buildings that have been identified there. We will look at any focused PD to support teachers that they need additional support and training on strategies. That'll be provided as well. One of the biggest things that we've seen, you know, this is elementary school does a better job with this at small group instruction, really honing in. And, you know, if you go to an elementary classroom, you see centers all over the place. Well, really that model would really work well in the middle school and high school. We see a little more in middle school, some teachers still doing that, but where it's really focused to where the targeted small group instruction is on the specific needs of those students. And sometimes that allows that flexibility, different learning centers and activities for students to engage in project-based learning and hands-on learning and really to hone in on what those skill sets are. So taking a deep dive into what that data says, what is it, but you know, if it gives us data from that assessment, what is that particular standard that's causing it? We have certain standards that are called power standards. Those are the ones that have a heavy hit in the assessment that's given by the state. And so what are those? Where are those deficiencies? How do we address that? So really, you know, using our data, we're going to prioritize our curriculum specialists. They'll be serving all schools, but we'll do in-depth support to those schools that are identified as low performers. So spend more time in those buildings working to try to address some of those areas that we have there. We'll have our quarterly data meetings too. We're not going to wait for this time next year when the testing data comes out. It's not going to do us any good. So what are we, the NC check-ins, those interim assessments, teacher-made assessments, what are we seeing? You know, are we looking at not only just in the individual classroom, but say sixth grade math across the district, if we've given a common assessment, common test, then, you know, is there a certain particular problem or type of problem or standard that has getting missed by 10, 15, 20, 30, 50, 70% of the kids? If that's the case, then that becomes an instructional problem. So we got to fix that. So really going deep to see what that is. Obviously, we've finalized and accelerated our adoption of those core materials. Obviously, we try to address those needs. So the process, schools as a part of their school improvement planning process, they do have 2 meetings per month, one with a full school improvement team, and they can also have a committee meeting for their second. And the district is also that we're not going to ask the schools to do something we're not willing to do ourselves. And we want to model for them just what we've been doing that. And I think that's important that we do that. One other thing we've also encouraged that the district coach that's assigned to that school will visit that school at least once weekly, check in, see how things are going. How can we help? What additional supports do you need? And that'll be coupled by regular visits that we do, because I believe that if this is all of us in here together, our thing this year is one team, one goal. We all own this. We're all going to work together, and we're all going to continue to do what's best for our kids to help them improve and to help support our team and our staff. So that's one thing we're committing to as well. And some additional supports that we'll have that's not necessarily listed, but we are doing a targeted approach to these schools and all of our schools for that matter. We'll support them all, but these that unfortunately have found themselves under these labels, we're going to work to do everything we can. I think Mr. McCarthy, was it 2 schools that exited TSI status last year? I believe I might be wrong in that. I think we had 6 last year. We're down to 4 with CSI, TSI. I can get that accurate for you all, but I believe that's the case. So we're exiting and moving schools. We've already increased the number of schools that have met or exceeded growth. So something is being done right. Now, we're going to continue to work together and continue to improve, but just want to kind of share that with you all tonight. That plan does not require any board approval, just for information. So next board meeting, you all will be approving the school improvement plans for all 13 schools. And then those will be required to be submitted. One other piece that's a part of this for performing school letters went out today to parents to notify them of the school status. We're required to do that in statute. We also, as a part of this, part of low performing schools, is that they're required to have a window of opportunity for parents and the community to make comments on their school improvement plan. That's going live on our website as of tomorrow morning. So that there's a Google form that'll be there that folks can place comments, commendations, things they would like to see that may be improved. And the schools will take that feedback and incorporate that into their plans as well. So that'll be going out in addition. So all those moving parts, once you all approve their plans at the next board meeting, they need to make any necessary edits, clerical. They'll have 5 days to submit to the state board. And then, of course, those plans can be modified at any time as they work through. They may work as a faculty and as a school improvement team and determine maybe strategy A needs to be changed a little bit. So they have the power to do that because you want it. The plan's not going to do any good if it's just done and stuck in cyberspace out there or put on a shelf. If it's not part of their discussion, and because we should be talking about how our kids are improving and where are the areas of growth that need to be. Those have got to be real conversations that we're having in the building, where that teaching and learning is taking place every day. And we as a district team need to be supporting that effort. So, making that a conscious effort, but that's just some of our preliminary plans we're looking at trying to do is want to kind of get the board an update on where that process is.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Was there ever a time when these schools weren't so low performing?
I think since we've had this formula, one of the barriers I think that sticks out in it is there's been so many iterations of these assessments. They have changed standards. It's almost like once you get through a process of adopting standards and you're starting to folks are starting to get there, then the state decides, oh, we're going to change them around again. Now, y'all know Common Core came into play there in the middle of all that too. So that totally changed. So we have always had schools, unfortunately, have really been on this list, and it's kind of fluctuated depending on where we are. And it's fluctuated among subgroups because, and the thing that's difficult about this is, if I'm looking at third grade in math, for example, and say third grade math exceeded growth in a school. Well, next year's second graders may come in as a whole at a different level, or it could be not just level, but it could be where students move from elementary to middle. Sometimes you have a dip there. So sometimes it's hard to compare, apples to apples when you go. The real true measure is to follow a group of students. So if you start with a group of kids in third grade, you're following those kids in fourth and fifth and sixth. How is that progression going when they get to high school? And that's something this model actually does not do a lot of. The only thing cohort that we come out of that comes out of Raleigh and we report is cohort graduation rates. That's actually one part of data that we've talked about doing a better job ourselves because we need that data. So if we're following this year's third grade and we'll follow fourth grade, that really gives a not just year to year, school by school, but that gives you a true measure really of how the kids are moving forward because the constant is the kids, for most part, remain the same. But we've had folks on, as far as I can remember, that we've had schools on these lists. And it's hard to get off. Sometimes a couple have been able to exit. They might get a year off and have a year that, their growth is 1 point over. And we have so many just a few points from getting off of it now or going to the next level. So
we don't know how far back you have to go to find out when the schools weren't doing as bad.
Mr. Carpenter, how far back will your little system take you?
I think I can get back to, I want to say maybe around 2000. It might be around 2015, 16.
Okay. That's how further back you can go.
As far as the data
Wow.
that we have.
And then we had, was it 2021? We had no testing data because that was the year that's when the pandemic. So we didn't have any data that year. But to think through, so that would have been, so this year's second graders, first grade, second grade, third
We're
grade.
talking about the group that was
Right.
at home,
Mhm.
about the third grade.
Third grade now, so they've had to do a lot of catching up. That's third grade. It's also where the state hits the read to achieve, and so we have a lot of a push on third grade level.
What you're saying is that you can't go back any earlier than 2015 to find out how our schools are doing.
I would have to go and try and dig through and see what I could find back there as far as other data, as far as the information that's online. I can go back and double check and let you know.
Then we can check with DPI, to see if there's any archive data that they would have on our behalf, so. I want to think 2012 or 2013, they did this new 80-20 model. I don't know what it, before it was the ABCs, they used to give bonuses to teachers when,
Yep.
so it was a whole lot different model back then, at that point, but I want to think it was either 2012 or 2013. We can get an answer to that, and we can, Mr. McCarthy can follow up with Dr. Howard at DPI to see how far back they may have data that we may not have access to here, and we'd be glad to get that together and share with you all to really see.
Okay.
And there again, like I said, it's the challenge is they've had so many different changes in standards. It's really hard to do a lot of comparison. But I'm comfortable and confident in the fact, I won't say comfortable, I'll say I'm confident in the fact that we've had so many gains just this year and those growth numbers. So, I mean, I think we're really heading in the right direction. Got a lot more work to do. I think one thing that's going to help in our reading and math is those core materials, which we have not had. They've picked and done different things, and books have not, had different curriculums in place, but haven't implemented with fidelity. And so if we've got a core resource that every child is getting instruction on, that makes a difference too. So that's going to, I think, really even help us elevate even further. But we can definitely work on trying to get that.
I just looked, the school performance grades came into effect, like the letter grades came into effect in 2013.
Till 13.
So we wouldn't have information as far as to compare letter grades back before then. And as far as trying to compare test grades, I mean, like test levels, they renorm the tests every few years. So your test scores, like they change too.
Along with the curriculum as well.
Right.
Curriculum changing, so that's another test you gotta overcome.
There's a lot of variables. Plus, we've even had where they've changed the course that was tested. We've had that change a couple of times. It might have been one level of science, they changed to a different one. So we've had a lot, but we can go back. I think with good information to have, we can get, maybe if we only get to 15 in the secure jail, maybe we can call Tammy and get 13, 14, 14, 15, maybe if they can pull that for us. And I think it's just good information to have, but I believe that you all can rest in that. I think we're moving in the right direction. We got a lot more growth to go, and a lot more work to do, but I'm encouraged that we have 10 schools now that have met or exceeded growth.
Thank you, Dr. Atkinson, for that. And Mr. McCarthy. Okay, 8.05, Senate Bill 49, Parents' Bill of Rights overview. Dr. Atkinson, go back to you.
All right, thank you, Chairman Benton and board members. Want to share with you all, I've actually forwarded, we'll be taking care of some custom policy updates here shortly. But as you know, and I did share this in the last update, I think our board meeting was the day before they voted to override the veto that was done by the governor on Senate Bill 49. That did pass, and it actually became effective the day before. So what we did is, we got some guidance, obviously, out of Raleigh. There's a few things that legislature is looking at maybe doing as far as potential technical corrections, is what they'll say, or maybe moving the timeline for some things to be effective in January 1, because it did force districts to kind of really pick up the pace and say, we got a lot of stuff we got to get together. But I just want to kind of go through what these Bill of Rights. I will tell you that the majority of these items that are spelled out were already in board policy that we had available for parents and kind of already did. The policy that you'll be looking at in a little bit to hopefully approve, because we are trying to get things in place to cite the appropriate legislation that's in place, they had some modifications to just update things specifically that the Senate Bill 49 said. So as far as the Parents' Bill of Rights, there are 12 items. And we actually sent this to families shortly after we had our initial webinar, and basically said that the Board of Education Administration highly values parental engagement, and we respect the rights of parents in the education and upbringing of their children. And so what we want to do is we want to list these rights that were highlighted as a part of Senate Bill 49. I believe, Mr. Gray, I may be wrong, I think it's created a new category in the law It will be, chapter 114. There's some references to it in 115, which is the public school law, but I think it's creating a new chapter, in 114, which will be dedicated to this in its entirety. But there are 12 specific rights that are listed. I want to go through those with you all and reference those board policies, that those numbers, and I don't think any numbers are changing in what you're approving tonight. It's just some of the language to align with the laws. It says parents have legal rights with regard to their child's education, including the following: the right to consent or withhold consent for participation in reproductive health and safety education programs, and that's consistent with the requirements of General Statute 115C 81.30. The existing board policy that references that is 3540, the Comprehensive Health Education Program. The second one is the right to seek a medical or religious exemption for immunization requirements, consistent with the requirements of General Statute 130A 156 and General Statute 130A 157. That aligns with board policy 4110, immunization and health requirements for school admission. The next one, the right to review statewide standardized assessment results as part of the state report card. And that's a couple of policies referenced there: 1310 parental involvement and 1320 Title I parent and family engagement. The fourth one, the right to request an evaluation of their child for an academically or intellectually gifted program, or for identification as a child with a disability, as provided in Article 9 of that chapter. We have policies in place: 3520, which is the special education programs, rights of students with disabilities, 4155, assignment to classes. And there's also available on DPI, which outlines the federal parent rights and responsibilities in special education. So there's 3 references there. The right to inspect and purchase public school unit textbooks and other supplementary instructional materials as provided in Part 3 and Article A of that chapter. So we do have an existing policy. There'll be some language modified in the policy for you all to approve tonight. Parental inspection of and the objection to instructional materials. It's also cites General Statute 115C 102, which is still in law, giving those parents that right. That's also a federal right as well. The right to access information relating to the unit's policies for promotion and retention, including high school graduation requirements, citing board policy 3420, student promotion accountability 3405, students at risk for academic failure, and policy code 3460, graduation requirements. The right to receive student report cards on a regular basis that clearly depict and grade the student's academic performance in each class or course, the student's conduct, and the student's attendance. That's policy 3400, evaluation of student progress. The right to access information relating to the state public education system, state standards, report card requirements, attendance requirements, and textbook requirements. That also relates to 1310 parental involvement. The right to participate in parent-teacher organizations. We have a policy on that, 5010. The right to opt in to certain data collection for their child as provided in Part 5 of the article and 29 of that chapter in 115C. And that policy is 1310-4002 and 4720, surveys of students. The right for students to participate in protected student information surveys only with parental consent, as allowed in General Statute 115C 76.65. That's also referenced in 1310, as well as 4720. And the right to review all available records of materials their child has borrowed from a school library. That's policy code 5700, 3210, parental inspection and objection of materials. Also, some other parts of that, that Senate bill has several moving parts. That's the Parents' Bill of Rights. It does make some changes as it relates to parents' requests for information and timelines for that. Those are going to be some of the things that changes in policy. 10-day window to the school. Request has to be in writing. Another 10 days. It can have a 10-day extension. If that's not fulfilled, parent can appeal to the superintendent's office. I'll have 10 days, an additional 10 days of additional information is needed. They also have a right to appeal to the board. If, again, we have to cite if there's, obviously we're not going to keep information from parents. But if there's something they've asked for that's not permissible in a general statute, we have to cite why the request for the parent's information could not be fulfilled at that time. But I want to say that it is we're gonna follow the law. We've always done this. Anything that parents have asked on behalf of their child, we have given them that access to that within what the law says and protections of FERPA and HIPAA and those kind of things that we have to do. So I tend to abide by that. We do have some mandatory reporting that's I don't know if it says September 15th, we've already passed that. So I guess this will be for next year. So we have to report to the state board how many appeals have been made to you all as the board. So they've gone through principal, they've gone through me, they've appealed to the board for request. Now, that particular appeal does not have a judicial review, so it stops with the board. So the board's decision on that particular one is final. So there's no judicial review that would go past that. There's also a policy for or changes for what they call remedies for parental concerns. Again, that has to be brought in writing to the principal. There's a 30-day window there, and then a statement has to be provided why that's not done. Then if that's not resolved by us as a public school unit with the board, they have a right to request a parental concern hearing before the state board, and they're talking about a state hearing officer in that. So there's just changing some of those things. Obviously, we're going to do everything we can to take care and remedy any things that come up before that. Obviously, and we want to do that. I do want to share that some things that we have worked on. In fact, I spent some time over the weekend kind of putting some of these things together. We'll be working with this with our principals tomorrow, just to ensure that we've got total transparency and providing everything that parents need to request these things. So we are looking at putting into place and this is in policy, but a form for a request for reconsideration of materials. So if parents have an objection to a library book or whatever it may be, that has to be done in writing, starts with the principal. So we'll have that form for them to guide them through that. The reason why we're doing these forms is to make sure that we're following the procedures. So we want to give them the form. So that way a parent hadn't got to shoot in the dark and think that, well, if I got to ask for, we give them everything it says that you need to request. So point out to us what part of it you object to. One thing that policy says that the objectionable material obviously will be away from that student. If it's a library book, it stays in place while the proceedings are going. And of course, there's several things in that policy. So that's one thing we're going to make available. There's also parental consent is required for a student to use a preferred name or a pronoun. So the parent must give consent for that change to happen. So even if a child, his name is Thomas James, and he goes by TJ, the parent has got to give consent to the school to use TJ. So what we did quickly is we told it, because school was kind of starting, if we had an instance, parents, have reached out to parents to get their permission. So we've actually now developed a form to have that on file. It'll be done annually, so that if a parent wants to give consent, a child may go by their middle name. Now, there's some official records that have to remain the same, report cards, that kind of thing. But in terms of referencing the student, we would have the parents' consent, as this legislation says, before there's any change to what we identify the student as far as their name or any pronoun changes, he, she, whatever that may be. And so that consent will be there. One thing that you heard shared a moment ago was about survey information. There are specific things that are considered protected information that parents should give consent to before a child takes part in a protected information survey. The legislation identifies these areas as being what's considered protected information. Political affiliations or beliefs, mental or psychological problems, sex behavior or attitudes, illegal, antisocial, self-incriminating or demeaning behavior, critical appraisals of close family relationships, legally recognized or separately privileged relationships, religious practices, affirmations, affiliations, or beliefs, income, except for required eligibility or financial assistance. So one thing we're going to be instituting, in addition to, we don't have, to my knowledge, a lot of surveys that ask that kind of question. But what I'm requesting of schools is to have a survey consent form filled out by the school with a copy of the form to come to my office to review first. And if it falls into, and I want to make sure that anything we're doing a survey, if something comes on there that has protected information, I'm going to ensure that there's also parent consent form that will go home with that survey, as well as a copy of the survey. Legislation says that has to be in the parent's hands 10 days before the survey is given. So we don't have we don't do the practice of opt out anymore. Parents have got to give their express consent. I want my child to fill it out. I do not want my child to fill it out, and we honor that request. All right, so, historically, some surveys that have come out of Raleigh and different things have said it's been you can opt out of it. Same thing with our reproductive health education. Parents have to say, I want my child to participate, or I do not want my child to participate. That is the parent's express right. So we'll have consents on that. One other thing that we talked about as well, and this doesn't say this, but I think this is important. I'm asking on there what educational value or standards does this survey address as it relates to the child's educational benefit. So we shouldn't be just doing something to be doing it. There's got to be an educational, for the business of education, there's got to be an educational benefit for the student. So one thing we've also added and clarified is a guest presentation form before moving forward. If there's any guest speakers that are to come into the school, there's a request form that needs to be filled out and turned into my office for approval. Because we want to make sure that there's no presentations that are crossing the line of what is allowable and not allowable. I will say this, we are not in the business in Bladen County Schools of indoctrinating children. We teach children curriculum and we teach the standards that we're supposed to. There are certain things that's in place for parents to do at home with their children. There are certain things that we're supposed to teach children to have skills to be successful in life academically, whatever path they choose to go into a career in high school, after high school, they choose to go into the military, they choose to go to a 2-year college, a 4-year college, whatever avenue, it's our job as an educational institution to equip them with skills. When it comes to religious beliefs, political affiliations, that is for the home. We don't teach that. Now, when it comes to things like civic literacy and all, obviously we teach children about what their rights are as citizens, but we don't tell kids or families what to do, what to say, how to vote, how to think, because as a citizen, we have got, and our goal is to produce 21st century ready. That's what we've always said, but we've already passed that. So we've got to teach children to be successful in life, because at some point they're going to graduate and they're going to step into the world, and whatever path they go into, they have got to make those decisions based on the education we give them, and also based on the values of their home or values of their religious, whatever that may be, because that is the choice of the home. So I say that to say Bladen County Schools will follow this law. We will do what is expected of us. We've actually added some additional things I think that will help us moving forward, just so there's no questions, there's no ambiguity as it relates to these guest presenters. I want to know what curriculum standard this is going to be addressed. I want to see the content of the presentation. And I'm doing that just because I want to make sure that everything we do in this school district, because you have charged me as a board with the responsibility to oversee this school district and to make sure that we're following the law and to make sure that we're following the procedures that you as a board and policies you've all put in place. And you've challenged me to do procedures that align with those policies. That's something we're talking about doing more of. Make sure, do we have any gaps in procedures that we have? Make sure all this stuff's clarified so we don't have any concerns. But we're going to ensure that as Session Law 2023-106, better known as Senate Bill 49, that all these things that have been put into law, we're going to make sure we follow as a school system and maybe go above and beyond what we're supposed to, just because we want to protect our children and make sure that obviously that we're following what the law says we have to do and that we're staying in our lane as an educational institution. We want to work with parents, not work against parents. So what is it we can do to educate parents? A lot of our schools have their Title I nights, curriculum night, really to encourage that kind of, we want them to be involved. If a parent wants to, just like part of this consent is not just to say, I have a challenge to a curriculum material or a question about a curriculum material, I'd like to see it. So we have the request, the parent schedules that with the principal, and any curriculum resource that's used in a school, parent has a right to come in, schedule that with the principal and review that material. And we've told our folks, you know, you're not going to purchase a curriculum resource from anywhere that's going to be 100% like it needs to be. We know that. But it's our job as professionals to take our state standards, take that curriculum and take out and not use what's not appropriate in those materials. And so we've challenged our folks, you know, we had teachers on these curriculum committees, and then of course the board, you all at Sterling Net got a copy of those materials. So, you know, and as folks are going through, if they come across something, alert us, we'll fix it, we'll take care of it. Because we believe in protecting and following what the law says we're supposed to do. And so we want to protect the rights of parents, make sure that we're following what this law says, that we're getting the necessary consents that we have moving forward. Like I said, some of the things we already had in place that were done a little differently. Like it might have been more of an opt-out, but you know, we're following the letter of the law. When it says you got to have my consent, you're going to tell us, yes, I consent, or no, I do not consent. One other final piece there is there's been some questions, and this is something I think they're going to clarify in the technical corrections, and I think they're going to put it as part of the budget bill. Sometimes they throw stuff, you know, trying to close out the session. There's been some questions about health services to students. You know, and what necessitates consent versus not. So we know some things like the reproductive health, that's a clear separate consent that's given. I have a draft, I haven't had a chance to share it with Mr. Grad, just kind of finalized it today. But we're looking at putting in place, now the law, and it clarified this, the law does not prevent emergency medical treatment. So if there's a concern, we're not going to just let a child or someone suffer because, you know, there may not be a consent form. We're covered under the law to address, you know, any emergency situations. But one of the things that's not real clear is deals with general health, such as, you know, I'm not feeling well, can I go to the nurse? Well, in theory, the way we interpret this now is there needs to be consent from the parent. So what we've been told is to operate as we've done. You know, obviously nurses are going to call home and say, Mr. or Miss So-and-so, Jason's in my office. I've checked his temperature. He has a fever of 101. You know, I believe he may have a stomach bug or something. You may want to take him to the doctor. So we want to make sure we've covered ourselves as a school system. So what I'm going to have Mr. Grady look at, and even at least in the interim, is to have a consent on file that allows us to provide general services. We're not diagnosing illnesses. Because even with students that have medication now, that's already got a consent because they've already worked with the school. That's been documented. So child has to have a particular medication twice a day. That's handled and documented appropriately. The parents already given a consent. But we're talking about just those general things. We want to make sure that if there's a parent that does not consent, that we're honoring and respecting that right. And so that's something we're going to work with. I'm going to share with Mr. Grady, have him look through that form for us to make sure we've addressed everything from a general health perspective. And we believe there will be some other resources from our professional organizations to kind of help us on this. But we're not going to sit on this. We need to go ahead and take action and move forward. So I just wanted to kind of give the board an overview. We've already given notice to families of this Bill of Rights. Tomorrow we have our principals meeting. So I'm going to go through these forms that we know are ready to go. And then I'll kind of talk to them about the health form that we'll be looking at and going ahead and getting these things in place. I wish we'd have had them before school started so we could have had that as part of our enrollment, but moving forward in our enrollment information, all that will be present so the parent can take care of all of that at one time. But I hope that parents and communities see that we're respecting their rights and that we're going to do what we're supposed to do. And we don't take our job lightly in educating students. So we want to do everything that's right by families, right by children, right by the school system, right by our community, and respect parents and their rights. So I want to kind of give you an update of where we are. And I'll have to answer any questions. I can answer for you if you have any questions or additional follow-up.
When you send these permission slips out or whatever, you know, there, are you mailing them out? Is that what?
Typically we have, usually we do is we send them home with students. But you know, sometimes, and we have had some parents say, can you, they might not. We've had some parents ask, can you mail things home to me? And we do respect that. So typically we've got our communication system starting up reminds so parents can indicate if you want something mailed to me. We even have some parents say, would you mind emailing that to me? So we're going to honor whichever method parents ask us to send information to them.
The reason I was asking is because you said you have to have a yes, you can, or no, that, yes, the child can, or no, they can't. Well, if you don't get no answer, what steps are we gonna take to be able to see if we can get any answer?
Well, we're gonna also do, that's why they have these windows. So like, for example, the 10 days, you give it, it's what I want to encourage principals, if we're on day 5, you've only gotten half of those back or 2/3 back. Call that family. Did you all receive this? Can I send you another copy? But our default answer now is if we don't have express consent from a parent that says yes, our default is going to be no.
Okay.
All right. And we did that because we can't assume for a parent a yes. But if you don't tell us, we're going to say that we're going to act in the manner of you didn't give us consent to do this. So we're not going to do it. So that's our default. If we don't get a form back, our answer is no. So this child will not participate until parent says they have consent to participate in this program or take the survey or whatever. So I think that's important for us to make sure that message is clear. But obviously, it's our due diligence to follow up with families if we hadn't got, because we won't. If there's going to be an opportunity given, and you know, there's some things that are controversial like reproductive health. You know, you want to respect the rights. Some parents want to teach that on their own. They don't want, you know, even though it's an abstinence-based approach, some families want to do it on their own, and we've got to respect that right. So if we don't get that consent form back for Jason on day 5, we need to follow up with the family. Did you all receive the consent form? Can I send you another one? Do we need me to mail you one? Do you need me to email you one? You know, we want to make sure everybody has an opportunity to fill out the consent form. But if it doesn't come in, the answer is no. So I think that's important to communicate. We're not going to put a child in something that we don't have express consent from a parent to do so.
So the children, mainly the older, the high school children.
Because sometimes things don't make it. I have a high schooler, so.
So are they aware? I mean, have we talked to them about this and they know what's going on?
Well, I will be, like I said, our kickoff really with some of these forms is tomorrow. I wanted to share this with you all tonight. We've got a presentation for tomorrow. How we're going to go through this goes, part of this now is going to be education on our end. So share with, we've already given them a list of what their rights are. So getting these forms, and one thing I talked to Ms. Johnson about is, you know, it's out there on a tab under students and families. We've got to put the Parents' Bill of Rights at a very clear, easy to find. So we link all these things there for them. And we've got to make sure we do a better job, even as schools. If you're going to have something that's clearly communicated through every avenue you have, if it's your social media page, if it's the Remind app, if it's a letter home, parents got an email. Said Remind allows us to send text messages. So whatever way it is to get that message to them, you know, we've got to do that. So one thing that's going to be, it's going to be a little more work for us. And some of these things that we've added, I don't mind adding because I think we need to do that to protect our interests as a school system, but also mostly, you know, make sure we're protecting the rights of parents. But, you know, we're going to make sure that it's going to change how we do some things. Now we've had consents, but a lot of times it's been an opt out. If you don't get it, sometimes it's automatic opt in. That's not our practice anymore moving forward. It's that opt out. But we've got to do a better job. And I think this is not necessarily saying anybody's doing anything bad, but every school system now has got to have more clear, direct communication with parents. So if something doesn't come in, you need to follow up with the parent. And we realize, all of us know that we have some children that are being raised and grandparents are the legal guardian. Uncles are a legal guardian. Whoever that legal guardian is, and we have some folks that are much older that have to take care of younger children. We realize. So we can't always depend on technology being that answer to get that information. So we need to know what is the preferred communication. And we're doing it multiple ways so that it's not missed by anybody.
And making sure we have the right person.
That's correct. No, it's a lot, but you have our commitment as an administration and from the school level to district that we're going to adhere to this and make sure that we're following the level of the law in our policies.
No question. We have a couple of action items in number 9. Parents' Bill of Rights. And we need to suspend policy 210 first, or we need to vote on this?
Yes, sir, Mr. Benton. what we'll do is typically board policies have to stay on the table for 30 days. Unless it's an emergency adoption, the board can set aside policy first and then adopt those. We do know that the law has already been passed and we do need to get these policies updated. I did share those out to you all in email as soon as I got them. We would like to request that the board set aside policies so that we may adopt these policies to be in compliance with the new law.
Okay, so we need a motion that we set aside policy.
To suspend the policy, yes, suspend.
In the policy.
Second.
Okay, we have a moving second that we suspend the policy 2410. Any discussion? There is none. All those in favor, let me know by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed likewise. It is none. Motion carries. Policy has been suspended, so.
And at this time, Chairman Benton and board members, I'd request that the board approve the special emergency custom policy updates specific to the Parents' Bill of Rights.
Motion to approve.
It's been moved and properly seconded. Is there any discussion? If there is none, all those in favor, let me know by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed likewise. Is none, motion carries. Nine point zero two. Approval of proposed bid package, Mr. Benny Lena.
We were here tonight to see if I could seek approval on your proposed bid packet for the tracks.
And just for context and just some clarity, if I may interject, this RFP speaks specifically to resurfacing and putting tracks to what will be considered competition standards. So option A under the RFP is to do that for East and West Bladen's tracks. Option B, which was a camping discussion, was to do that for Elizabethtown Middle School. There was a question that came, and part of the discussion was if option B ended up being, you're seeking pricing to get information on both. But if option B was to be a plausible option for the board. And, the question came up concerning doing work on East and West Bladen, whatever that needs to be done, whether it's re-asphalt, whatever. There's a couple ways to approach that, and we need to consent of the board because you all asked us to bring this particular RFP back to you also. We could approach that a couple ways. It could be a separate, if you could run this to see what the cost is for competition ready, following the specifications in NCH, SAA, National Fit, whatever the guidelines are for a track to be competition ready, is what these two options speak to. You can look at doing an addendum that requests pricing if option B, if a vendor is bidding on option B, could they provide pricing as well as on resurfacing East and West Bladen or whatever asphalt. Or it could be a separate proposal. The board can seek these price options and you could make that a separate request if the board chose to go with B over A. If the board does A, you won't need that. So, yes, sir.
Why don't we go to a facilities meeting and see what we got?
We can do that. That's what the board, we can divert that to.
Do that and discuss it and see what, and get some prices from Benny and see where we are. We don't even know where we are right now.
Well, Mr. Rhoda, that because this, in the initial process that we're just seeking out quotes, it exceeded the 500,000 mark. So it's going to require a formal bid.
Yeah.
So, what we could do is if you all desire to go back to committee to discuss, is there anything specifically that you want to change about? Is there any additional specs you want in here? Do you want to add anything? Then the facilities committee could bring that back to the full board for approval before we post the RFP. So that's an option to do. Part of it is you were trying to keep it where it can get in an RFP, you got to be more specific because you don't want to get a bunch of crazy options that may be out of the scope of what the board's desire is on that. So
But see, my thing is, we've not discussed it with the facilities committee. The only thing I see is you, Mr. Clark emailing over there. Y'all the only two discussing that, so maybe we could get the facilities committee to look at what you two are discussing and interject what we need to do.
Could we have anything ready by our next meeting? With that,
we could try to get the facility, well, I'm sorry, we can schedule a facilities committee to examine this, if Mr. Lennon can bring the other quotes that we had, just to make sure that everything is spelled out. And then the facilities committee can bring that back to the board at the October meeting, and you all make a decision on the RFP, which direction to go in terms of, adding an addendum, asking for that part separately, or putting it all under one.
that's what I think we should do.
What, Mr. McClure?
Same thing you've asked for, going to the meeting.
And one thing I'll, for that, and in response to Mr. Clark's question, I want to make sure that you all got that same information that we, responded. So that's why I was kind of explaining there. It'll probably be good to kind of determine which direction you all want to go, because it can get convoluted, but we want to make sure that if all the companies that are going to provide, whoever they are, we don't know who they're going to be, has a fair and accurate list of what it is that is desired and the option. Because there are a bunch of options that y'all saw when the gentleman came in July. There's several things they could really do. And sometimes you may want them to provide options of different types of services in their bid. So if it's resin's probably not one of them, but if there's like that cushiony kind of rubberized surfacing, versus asphalt, or what those requirements are. You also got to think about too, you want it to be turnkey. So are there things that may need to be spelled out a little bit clearer in this? This was actually adapted from an RFP that Lee County had used. So that's kind of what we tried to, let's get a draft together for you all to kind of look at and think through.
Well, I mean, I asked both of those companies to send me some projects that were about 5 years old.
And
I've received no information, so
they
their credibility with me is not very good.
And that's like that now.
Last meeting, I thought we agreed that we would let them know what we need them to bid on.
That's what this is.
Basically, this is what Lee County, we haven't seen this though. We don't know what Lee County has. I mean, I don't know how he acquired this. He probably, did you go?
Well, this is a draft. This
You
is
haven't seen Lee County's track, so this is what they sent you, but we haven't seen it. We don't know that this.
Copy, so y'all can decide.
right. This was
Right.
still take discussion. That's why it says draft. It doesn't say final, because there's some things that we go ahead and post, but you all requested that you see. That's why we didn't, because this is.
But what I'm stating is that he has not,
And I haven't seen it.
and I don't know that you have directed them to do, but I'm saying you haven't physically looked at it. You don't know what it looks like. We don't know that it meets what we want.
Right. That's why I think it's.
If we don't tell them that we want A, B, C, D, E, F, G in our bid, now give us a bid on what it's gonna take to give us that, they don't know what they're bidding on.
Right. And this was designed to be a kickoff point for us, because we knew there's been a lot of discussion back and forth over the last several months about different things that needed. And I was like you all, I was taken back because I told those gentlemen that night, send me the information. So I haven't gotten a thing from any of them.
And I say that for two reasons. One, we don't want to be putting stuff there that we don't need.
Right.
We don't want to tear up stuff that don't need to be torn up and then spend a lot of money on stuff that we don't need to spend money on.
Right. Because I've got some concerns about
But
drainage.
we do need to make sure that we have it like we want it.
Right.
But when they built those football fields, they built the track around them and the drainage was already there. I mean, we can just walk up and see the drainage is there. You can even walk over there to E-Town Middle and see the drainage is there.
That's just a draft,
Yeah.
because like Mr. Hartfield said last time,
Yeah, I understand
it's
that.
to give you an idea, of what do you want, or what do y'all want?
Right.
Some things to look at.
Right.
Consider.
Yep. And like I said, and they didn't, I was shocked because that night, it seemed like they were gung ho. Again, it had to be for the bid. One of them said like, I'm ready to get out here and do it. See nothing.
Yeah.
So.
And have we contacted them, Jason, at all to say, hey, did you decide not to give us some?
I can reach back out to them again. You know, if we, I think, well, we talked to them, what, first part of August, right around that August board meeting was the time we last talked with them, I believe, Mr. Lennon talked with them. Still hadn't received anything from them.
Maybe we can have Mr. Lennon touch base with them and find out, do they intend to help us out with this project or not?
What are we gonna do? Table this until?
If,
The next meeting, I
if
guess.
y'all want to, I mean, just based on Mr. Rhodes' comment too.
I got a question.
Like for us,
I see this request here and everything. My big thing is, we have or do we not have state-sponsored engineers that can come in and look at this? Because contractors are out to do what? They're out to make money. Yeah, they're gonna get the job done. But if we had engineers come out there, and I'm pretty sure the state's got some, maybe I'm wrong.
we do have,
At it and say, this is what you need, nothing more, nothing less, to piggyback off of what you just said about, you know, what we need and what we don't. Because I don't know about anybody else here, but I don't want to waste money if we don't have to.
I agree.
So if we can get an engineer to look at it as well and have, you know, the contractor and the engineer, so one can't blow smoke up our tail, you know?
Well, what might help,
That those companies have an engineer on board.
right,
It's just a matter of making sure that we meet the scholastic requirements
Right.
to say, hey, this is a legal track to run competition.
I think what might be helpful is for us to reach out to school planning. I know they do stuff with school construction, but say, do you have an engineer that works on athletic fields and facilities? Sure, they probably do. I know those folks are scheduled out, and what we could do is they might could come in and help us even further define what these specifications need to be. So like Mr. Rhodes said, if the drainage is there, leave that alone. So, you know, but a person from
Anywhere we can save money.
right, a person from school planning, DPI is going to look out for the interest of the school system. And where it's not being vendor driven, but it's being, you know, driven by a subject matter expert that's representing schools. So what I could do, let me ask you all this and kind of think about Mr. Rhodes' comment initially. Would this be something that the board would be comfortable in us seeking out, well, Mr. Lennon following up with the company that come previously, seeking out the school plan to see if we can get an engineer? Would you all want us to start with the facilities committee first?
I think we need to start with,
Yes.
Right, so that person can join
and then they can bring back the things that we.
Correct.
Yeah.
So let's do that. And so we might not be able to get all that accomplished before, because we got 3 weeks to the next meeting. We'll start that process. We'll reach out to school planning tomorrow to see about an engineer. When could someone be available to come down and discuss this? Maybe meet with the facilities committee.
Yes, there.
And then we'll take it from there, bring it back to you all once they've had a chance to kind of hash it out, and we'll work out everything.
And that's at both schools.
Yeah, we will do everything,
Yeah.
East Blade, West Blade, and have them look up here at East Middle as well too. We'll check out, because that was original question, was to look at all 3 facilities, so we can have them do all that.
Sounds good to me.
You have a vote to take.
I need a motion.
That we table.
That's seconds.
Okay, it's been moved and probably seconded that we table 9.2. Any more discussion?
Yes, Jason, you may need to schedule your facilities meeting.
Yes, sir. I'll take care of that. Once I'll find out the availability of the engineer, and then whatever they have, we'll try to get our facilities committees to get for that, so. Kind of get kicked off, so I'll let you all, we'll call it now. I will tell you, Miss Harrison can tell you, that's a difficult division to get, because we've called about some things with Far Hill and it's taken sometimes 2-3 weeks to get a response back, so we'll hound them, try to get a response to see if they can get an engineer assigned, but I do know they have engineers that are part of that, so as soon as I can get some times for them, we'll set a time for the facilities committee. You're right, gotta get it.
Any more discussion? No, we'll proceed with the vote. All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye. All opposed likewise. Motion carries the table 9.02, approval of proposed bid package. Okay, at this time,
Mr. Lennon?
entertain a motion that we go into closed session for the purpose of discussing personnel as per NCGS 143.3 to consult with an attorney needed as per NCGS 143.3 and to discuss student reassignment and student discipline as per the 1974 Family Rights and Privacy Act.
I move it for closed.
Second.
Moving properly say
I move that we come out.
Second.
Proper seconded that we come out of closed session or executive session. Any discussion? Not all those in favor, let it be known by saying aye. All opposed likewise. Is none, motion carries. We are now back in open session. And we'll go to item number 11.
Thank you, Chairman Bennett. Board members, this time I'd like to request the board's approval on the personnel action items as amended.
Motion to.
It's proper seconded that we approve the personnel action item as amended. Is there any discussion? There's none. I will proceed with the vote. All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed likewise. Is none, motion carries. Okay. That's on to number 12, matters of interest to the board.
I have
Coach.
one, pertaining to BTW. There was a contingent here earlier, but looked like they left. But what are we gonna do? And what can the community of Clarkson, BT Washington community, what can they do in order to use that facility?
All right, and what I can share now, the county has, they obviously have the first right review from the county commissioner, and I share that with you all. Had determined not to acquire the facility. So Mr. Grady, you can speak up about the requirements there.
Basically, I think there needs to be a discussion with the community leaders to see exactly what they want to do, but understanding what our parameters are under the law. I mean, the law basically says that we cannot donate school property. It has to be sold in some manner for fair market value. How we determine that fair market value, Mr. McCoy, is something probably we need to talk about. But there also may be some lease options that might be attractive. And I would certainly be willing to meet. Maybe something the facilities committee might want to look at and bring back to the board, but as I think I mentioned to this board before, we did have actually question the constitutionality of it, but it's presumed to be constitutional. If the legislature passes it, we did have a special bill passed by the legislature that allowed one of our properties to be donated, or even both. I can't remember, it's Spalding Monroe and the Lakeview Focus.
Spalding Monroe, I think it was.
And there was a special bill, so that might be an option to have one of our representatives introduce that bill. I think Mr. Briscoe may have introduced that bill last time. That might be an option to look at. Lease might be an option. But I think we need to have that discussion with the community and let them know what our parameters are.
Can we get something on the agenda for next month's meeting? We'll have someone here to represent that community.
We can do that, and then we can go through what the options are.
Yeah.
That's,
I'll be glad to be ready to present that.
thank you very much.
We'll do that. Thank you.
What we want.
Now, as we're talking about Booker T. Washington, what is the foregoing status for Plainview? Because I've been approached a couple of times about that.
Plainview.
I think some other board members have as well.
Once we vacate the building, we do a similar thing that we would, unless the board desires to use it for something else, school property, we would declare it the same way, just as we did in a resolution with Booker T, offered to the county first. Most likely, I don't want to speak for the county, but historically, they don't always, counties don't always acquire property, so it goes back. So it may end up being the same kind of thing with Plainview.
My suggestion to the board would be, if the board was inclined to determine that property to be surplus and was inclined to offer it to the county, knowing the county probably would refuse it. You may want to have one bill with both properties. I mean, it's not easy to get a bill passed through if that's an option that you have to go through.
Mhm.
So have both communities working
Right.
together.
You know, that may be something you want to consider.
So go ahead and put both of them on the same bill, so we don't have to go through that.
Right.
for that legislative action to, Mr. Graham, ask you this, Ken, is it possible for the board, even though we're still in the building, could we declare that surplus as a certain date? Could the board go ahead and do a resolution on Plainview as of January 1, or would you advise us waiting on that?
I really don't see a problem with that. I would want to double check it.
Okay.
I mean, all I recall the statute saying you have got to determine surplus and it doesn't
Determine.
say anything about you can't fix the date when it becomes surplus, but I still want to review it before I tell you. Sure.
So if Mr. Grady looks at that, and if we can, if it's fine with the board, I will bring, if we can, I'll bring that resolution next month as well to go ahead and take care of that, the Plainview property, if we can do that.
Okay, sound good. Appreciate it. Thank you.
So leasing would be like a normal leasing, a business leasing the building and stuff like that.
Right, and we've had,
Yeah, it's not really like, you got to be careful with the lease because if the lease is over a certain number of years, it's considered to be a purchase under the law. So it's really not a lease. So probably it would have to be for a year with it renewing yearly, something like that.
and then the other challenge I think we gotta think of is designating who's responsible for the maintenance of the building. If it's still our building, we're gonna have to maintain it still.
That's what we did with Blazing Focus for a period of time and maybe small.
That would be an ongoing call. We have to consider that too, maintenance, but
On that particular building, Plainview, it's been addressed that the community can use for several different things in that area to support that area. But it's also been brought to my attention that somebody might want to purchase it. So we would have to look at what the actual value of the building is and what our asking price is.
so the board could also vote to order an appraisal.
Yeah.
Those, at some point, if you want to look at that route, we could get that done.
Process for make sure we're doing it right.
Have to be someone specialized, because it's not every day you price a school building. That's kind of, but somebody that was specialized, they could advise the board.
I would just say that if we can find a way to make it amicable but the community would benefit from it, that would probably be the better way than just let somebody come purchase it and then just use it. It's not going back to the community.
Right.
We need to, that's our way of giving back.
Right, and I think things you have to also be cautious about too, as it relates to if it goes out for sale, is that if a charter school decides they want to purchase the facility, and that's.
I didn't say it, you did.
So
That's what I didn't say it, you did.
that has happened. So it's something to be mindful of as well. So we need to approach it very thoughtfully, I think, is the direction that we're trying to go.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
I got a couple of things, Ms. Harrison, Jason, fund balance, that's the first time I think I've ever seen it that much since I've been on the board. Y'all did a great job. Know a lot of, circumstances we didn't want to happen to get there. But, I've also, I don't know if any of the other board members, the graduations, we had them at A-Town Middle. A lot of people want to have their graduations in their home high school. I've been asked about it. It's something that, people approach me about every week. Somehow, I know it's a thing about the capacity, the, amount of people you can bring. I think we need to leave it up to the people and let them decide some kind of, let them vote on it or something like that.
And we've had folks split on that. We've had some that want to, and some that, because of the size, the challenge that had been at East and West. And if we could go back years ago when the construction, we'd have had an auditorium, hopefully. But that, even then you're still, somewhat limited. BCC used to, several high schools used BCC years ago, but they've taken out some seating in theirs, and Early College has theirs there. One option, and you have to do it had to be early enough in the day or late enough in the evening, is potentially do an outdoor ceremony on the football field, but you want to be kind of cautious of heat. So we could pitch that to senior families and ask them to respond. Would you, if you have at your home, give them option, have your homeschool, do you want to split? Now, what we had to do before is put a TV in the auxiliary gym, and some family members got one color ticket, they got to go in the main gym, and the other 3 or 4 had to go into the auxiliary gym. Or an outside option, because I mean, we're flexible, we can do separate days, because usually we've been doing east and west together. And we can also pitch the Elizabethtown Middle and just kind of, we could poll each senior class family and kind of see what they're saying, and we can honor that. We had the ability to be flexible in how we do graduations. I wish there was a facility that we could do it where everybody could be comfortable and not have to be outside. There's the one plus of doing it there is everyone gets to be in the room together, but I know that's also like, you want to be able to be nice to graduate from the building that you attend. So I know it's a catch-22 if we have space, but we can that's something we can do. Here shortly, we could ask seniors to do a survey to those families and see what they say. We reach all 3 high schools, colleges including. Get that, see what they tell us, and we can make that happen.
All right, thank you.
I just have one final thing. I want to thank the district and Ms. Brown for, and I don't know if the board is aware of it, but we just put these systems inside of every class for the help with the COVID. That's going to protect our kids and our staff, and it's going to keep them safer. The clean air systems. I think we got one right out front out here. I saw it walking in. So kudos for that. That's much needed. And I don't know who came up with the idea, but that's awesome. I think that was awesome. I think that's awesome because you're looking at the environment for the kids and the staff. And COVID killed us in a lot of ways. And the only other thing I want to speak on is the summer feeding program. Everybody worked on the summer feeding program, awesome job. I didn't get much feedback from it as far as, what the numbers were and how effective it was, but I got a lot of feedback from the community and meeting people in the grocery store and in the bank. It was just hitting me up, but they were excited about it. They really enjoyed it. I think we helped a lot of families, so we can't do it all, but whatever part we did, I think we made an impact. So thank you for your time and your efforts on that.
Appreciate it.
Any other board members with matters of interest? If not, we'll move on to 13, Chair's report. I have a report, but I would like to ask Mr. Lennon, do you have a update on the electrical work on the bleachers at the gyms at Clarkton and Bladenboro Middle Schools? What's going on with that?
Labor should be starting with Clarkton, might have an electrical problem in that box in Clarkton. It's so outdated that we might have to redo the whole panel box. So it's 40-something years old. So that's gonna be a problem with Clarkton. Bladenboro, he should be starting back on that this week. I did that. But
The same person doing the electrical work at Clarkton that's doing it at Bladenboro.
yes, sir.
So once he finishes up at Bladenboro, he's gonna start working on that box at Clarkton.
And the problem with Clarkton, like I said, that box is outdated. It's in the gym, it's inserted in the wall, and you might have to end up might have to put it.
One other thing I noticed, when I was looking, I don't know what you call them, those things they've got, it's kind of like a half step. It's kind of like you step up on it before you get to the bleachers and they stick out just about onto the floor. It appears to me to be more of a safety issue than anything that would be useful. Because they're only just a few inches from the floor. And they're very hard. Feels like metal, those corners. If you got a basketball player that falls and hits their head on that or any part of their body, it's going to hurt. They hit their head, no telling what might happen. I was just wondering, what's the purpose of those, if you understand what I'm talking about?
I've seen it, but I don't know, but I can call the company back that did it. I think they can remove them.
Well, they probably need to be. I would think, because like I say, if you got a basketball player and they run at full speed and they fall and they hit their head on one of those corners, hate to imagine what the result would be. And they play at a pretty, even the middle schoolers now, they play at a pretty fast pace. And those young ones are as big as I am in middle school. They're grown. So, I just think, I'm concerned about it. I think it's something that needs to be looked into because I don't see the purpose served that would outweigh the safety issues that they create. That's all I have. Number 14,
Thank you.
Dr. Axton.
Thank you, Chairman Benton and board members. Actually, I probably had my shortest update I've had for you all. We covered several things in the meeting. I did want to share with you all, we'll send you an invitation. Board has been invited to attend Agam Up Day. This is sponsored by our CTE and Fort County, 4-H. That's on October 10th and 11th from 9 to 2. It'll be at VCC. So we'll have it's the third grade students that will be attending that program. So it's a great time. And some of our middle school and high school FFA students will be helping lead some of those exhibits. So we're excited to listen to that to you. I wish I had some good news on the state budget. We still don't have a budget. They got called up in, I think, some gaming and gambling things, and one that was the House decided to go home Wednesday. So we still don't have a public school or state budget as a whole. Now they're saying it may be the end of September or into October. So we're still operating on a contingency budget, continuation budget.
Now, what does that mean that you're working on last year's budget?
Right, we
Everything like last year.
right, so employees that would have gotten their step increases salary wise in July don't have them. So whatever point the state budget, and then once the state budget is approved, it takes about 2 or 3 weeks for them in the allotment system to get that into us. And so the challenge is for employees, they're gonna get a lot of back pay at one time because of having to get called up. And you know that, so we're hoping they'll soon have that. And like I said, some of the clarifications for Bill of Rights and some other legislation are planned to be in the budget bill. And so I will share as soon as we know something. We were at the administrators law conference last week and we were hopeful, they were excited. Like, we're gonna get a decision today. And they told us be here an hour early and we'll do a session on the budget. But before we left, they said they've already gone home. Or they've adjourned for the day. So we didn't get a chance to do that. But as soon as I get anything on the budget from them, I'll share that with you all.
See where the governor put out a lot of money for the pre-K.
He did.
Yeah, I think it was 8 million.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, that's an area, and I'll tell you, we've added to our pre-K program. We've got a class now at East Arcadia
8 million.
that we didn't have before. So that's huge, and there's definitely a lot of work to be done on early learning, and if we can start students early, it would be definitely. So we definitely, but one of the things in the county strategic plan is to try to have the goal would be to have a universal pre-K for everybody. That would take a lot, but I mean, there's a lot of value. Kids learn a lot of skills in pre-K and social skills getting ready for kindergarten. So it's definitely tremendous. I was going to provide a little information on Booker T. Washington, where we handled that. The Law Symposium for School Board Association Annual Conference. The Law Symposium is October 11th through 13th. That's filling up pretty fast. And the annual conference is November 13th and 15th. Interested, please let the chair know. If you could do that by Wednesday, because when you get those reservations, like I said, the Law Symposium.
That one in Dallas.
Yeah.
What now?
The one in Dallas.
That's the one in Greensboro. Yeah. Yeah, they haven't sent us anything on the national conference yet. So
What's the dates on the annual?
the annual conference is November 13th through 15th. That's in Greensboro, and that's the Corey Convention Center, I believe.
Yes, sir.
So, and that's put on by the School Board Association. It's a really good conference. So if you'll let Mr. Benton know, we'll get those arranged. If you do it by Wednesday, please, so we can get reservations done. And all that'll be helpful. And last thing, and we appreciate y'all's commendations on the budget and trying to add to the fund balance, because there was a time where every district was really dipping into fund balance. So we've been able to get that cushion because some indirect cost on that. We've used our ESSER dollars to do several things, got some more projects we're still working through with some of the touchless things. We've been able to show our appreciation to staff through retention bonuses and sign-on bonuses, and where to put it this year. We're hoping to get one more in maybe at the beginning of next year, because that money has to be spent by September. We'll kind of see where we are a little further. But 2 big projects we want to undertake that are part of that ESSER plan, because it deals with safe and healthy active children, is our elementary playgrounds are in bad shape. So we want to put out a request for bids to replace and update all of our playgrounds at our elementary schools. It's past time to do that, so we're going to be putting that out. And also one other thing to deal with communications, and especially when we have closures and things like that. And I cringe sometimes because, you know, sometimes we have student helpers that go out and change the little letters on the marquee. I think of Clark School Discovery, one example, they're right there beside a 701. So it's much more safer and I think more efficient for schools to communicate messages as well as here at district office. So one of the things we're going to be doing, putting out a proposal with ESSER that will help our communications is to install digital signage at every school and the district office so that we can put those messages out. One other way to communicate with parents and folks driving by, and that will prevent students and our staff or being close to the road, manually changing letters. And y'all know that y'all been by some, the letters haven't been changed in a while or they keep falling. So it's much more effective and they can be done digitally. So that was something we had written to the plans where we put that out. Because I anticipate those two projects will be over 90,000. We'll bring those to the board for approval. We are going to solicit proposals on those two. Don't know we'll have them in time for October, maybe by November to do that. But just want to kind of share those upcoming projects we're looking at. And like I said, I had an exhaustive amount of things in the agenda tonight, so I'm going to stop with that. And we do appreciate the board's support. And, you know, I think we have a lot to celebrate as a district. We've come a long way and still got more work to do, but to have 10 schools where they are and to know that other schools are close and some of those schools are so close to the next letter grade, I think that we've got some folks who are really working hard. And I think we cannot thank our students and parents and families and our staff members enough for all they do every day. So appreciate you all and your support because the things y'all do for them with the bonuses and the gifts and gestures that the board and administration does, those folks are so appreciative for everything. You mean the littlest thing, folks say, at least you remember me. So I think even when ESSER is gone, I know the bonuses will be another thing we'll have to kind of look at. We hope this something else will come out, but the gestures of kindness that are done throughout the year, even those little things go, and give so much appreciation to folks. So they always tell us, please let the board know how much we appreciate it in administration. So on behalf of everyone, we thank you all for your support always. So we appreciate it.
Thank you, Dr. X. Entertain motion to adjourn.
I moved.
Second.
Robert second, adjourn. All those in favor?